Hello, I am so excited to be here for another episode. If you've been following along with my personal life and what I've had going on in the background, you know that a couple weeks ago, I had a little mommy makeover. I had a tummy tuck, some lipo, a fat transfer, and the extra skin taken off my eyelids, an upper bluff. I can't say the whole word. Those of you who know me know I am hilariously incompetent at saying big words. So clients, if you're listening, you've heard me fumble over words that I've seen 5,000 times on things like the GI map. Anyway, side note, the first couple of weeks of recovery after procedures like that is pretty intense. The first 3 to 5 days are really intense. And then the first 2 weeks was like a slow roll back into day-to-day life. I had a tummy tuck with full muscle repair. So pregnancy, or if you've gained a lot of weight and lost a lot of weight, can cause some separation of the muscles that connect at the middle of your stomach. And I have a pretty decent gap. So they basically sew it together from under your chest all the way down. That's a fairly painful recovery. I'm excited for it. I've had a lot of low back problems, had trouble building core strength. I'm excited to see what results look like, but it is no joke. So the last couple of weeks have been me at about 22, I'm back at about 80% now, and I'm feeling overall pretty good and moving around pretty well. Can't get back to exercise for a few more weeks, but I am walking as much as possible and doing the day-to-day things. So today's topic for the podcast is unexplained infertility. By the way, if you ever want to chat about any of those procedures I had done, I've gotten a lot of messages from you. I am happy from people in the community. I'm happy to chat with any of you about my experience there. But first go back and listen to last week's episode where I did kind of a behind the scenes peek into what the whole process looked like for me. Okay, unexplained infertility. This is one of the most common things that clients come to us with as a diagnosis. They've been told either straight up, you have unexplained infertility, or they've been told, hey, we don't really know what's going on. We've run all the tests. Everything looks great. Sometimes this kind of thing just happens. Let's proceed with drugs. Let's proceed with IUI. Let's proceed with IVF, because we're not really sure why this is going on for you or your husband or partner. Okay. This is one of the most common things that we see when clients are coming into our practice. And I'll tell you from personal experience, because I went through this myself. It sucks. It's like a dead end to you go through this process of trying to have a baby and you keep hope up in the first 6 months to a year before it's time, depending on your age, to go talk to a specialist. Every month you're like, this is going to be it. It's just taking me a little bit too, longer than others. And then as you get to the end of that period, you get excited about the fact that you're going to get answers. Gosh, I've been through this whole 6 months, year, and I know something's wrong. I'm finally going to get answers or finally going to pay attention to me. Some of you who are thinking ahead, go ahead and tell your OBGYN that you have been trying longer than you have so you can go get those answers earlier. And many of you will or have found out that there's not a whole lot of answers in those tests. For the majority of people, they're not going to find a whole lot, because what they're looking for is, are your tubes open? Are you ovulating regularly? Do your day 3 hormones look okay? Does your husband have a semen analysis that's marginally okay and in line with Western medicine standards? Okay, well, we don't know what's wrong. And you go from I'm getting the test, I'm going to figure out what's going on, to well, what do you mean that you don't know what's wrong? It can't be normal to not be able to get pregnant. And you're telling me there's no reason for it? It feels, I'm trying to pick up the emotion from when I was in it that I felt. It's hopelessness, because you're okay, I can do treatments, but really you're telling me there's nothing, there's no reason for this. That doesn't make any sense. The logical brain wants an answer for why this is happening. And when you don't get an answer, or you get an answer well, you're 38, your eggs are getting older, which is not an answer either, which falls into unexplained infertility, because, by the way, at 38, we can help you get pregnant. So hopelessness is probably the right word for how it feels to hit this dead end. And then they're you can try drugs and treatments. And for some people, they're great, that's fine. For other people that we work with, they're I don't want to go that route. This feels wrong. Or they go that route, even though they feel in their soul, this can't be it, right? This can't be it. And I'm here to tell you that there is always a reason for infertility. There is always a reason why you're not able to get and stay pregnant. And if you're sitting in this hopeless feeling boat of unexplained infertility, I want you to reframe it to not this is unexplained and there's no reason for it, but I don't know why we're not getting and staying pregnant yet. I don't know why yet, because there's always a reason for it. And I'm going to tell you today about a few of the most common reasons we see in our couples that we work with who come in with unexplained infertility and we get them to the other side to a successful pregnancy. Some of the most common things that we see with these couples that are causing their unexplained infertility. So let's talk about the woman first. One of the most common things we see in women with unexplained infertility is subclinical low thyroid function. What does that mean? It means she doesn't have full-on hypothyroidism, where an endocrinologist is going to tell her she's hypothyroid and she's got a medical diagnosis. But when we look at her labs, her thyroid panel is not optimal for fertility. It's slower than optimal, which is going to be very different from how a physician is going to look at a thyroid panel. So there's slower than optimal thyroid function. And a lot of times that comes along with a reduced level of the free thyroid hormone that is controlling our ability to get and stay pregnant. So free T3 tends to be lower than we would like to see it. And some people come to us and they've had these tests run with a Western medicine provider and they said everything was normal. And I'm like, well, your free T3 is 2.7. That's not great. That's not where we need it to be. And your TSH is 2.9 or 4. We see that commonly, reverse T3 being elevated. Along with that, on the thyroid, we tend to see elevated antibody markers. So this is something that's not tested very frequently, but it's a marker of Hashimoto's disease, thyroid autoimmunity. And when these antibodies are elevated, what's happening is the immune system is attacking the thyroid gland. And you can see this with or without some slow thyroid function. Sometimes it's happening by itself and the thyroid numbers look great. Usually there's some slow thyroid function and the elevated antibody numbers. And that by itself, just the elevated antibody numbers, even if your TSH is 1 and your free T3 is 3.7 and your reverse T3 is 10, all that looks perfect. If you have elevated antibody numbers, unfortunately, that by itself is a risk for infertility and miscarriage. So that is one of the most common things we see with clients who come into our practice. And I'll get the question very frequently, okay, well, what do I do about it? Like, I think I have this. What do I do about it? Well, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to it. We need to see what's going on with the client as a whole, run all of their labs, and create customized protocols for how to fix these things. But if you're being told, like, elevated antibody markers don't matter or there's nothing you can do about it, that's total BS. There's so much you can do about it. We have a client who is active with us right now. She's just a few months in. She's about halfway through the program. And when she started with us, one of her antibody markers was like 390. And within a handful of weeks, she's got it down to 60, working through the protocols that we've created for her. It's not a cookie cutter like, here, everyone's going to do exactly this to reduce their antibody levels. We have to see what's going on with you in your intake and in your labs. That's a super common one, though. In the men, we don't see the thyroid dysfunction as much. It tends to hit women a lot harder. The current view, data, opinion, if you will, is that this happens to women and other autoimmune things happen to women a lot more because of our very complex hormonal dance that's happening every month, where men are on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. They don't tend to be as impacted by it. We do see some thyroid issues with men, way less common than women though. One thing that impacts both genders across the board is gut issues. So I'm going to do a whole episode coming up on the gut and what our GI map test looks like, what it tells us, what those markers mean, and how it impacts fertility. I'm going to dive deep on it. It may be a couple-part podcast series, but I want you to know that if you've got unexplained infertility, there's definitely something going on in your gut too. So let me tell you what that looks like. We run a test called the GI map. It's a PCR test. It's super sensitive. It gives us great data from a sample of what's going on in your gut. It's a stool sample. Everyone hates collecting it and loves the results of running the protocols from the data we get. Anyway, Why is your gut so important in your fertility for both men and women? Well, there's a couple of simple ways to think about it. First of all, your gut has the job of absorbing the nutrients and minerals you're eating. So sometimes we will get clients in who have a really beautiful diet. They're eating really well, they're taking really good supplements, but they are not absorbing well. And then on the flip side, on other labs, we will see that they've got micronutrient deficiencies because they've got stuff going on in their gut. So if you just run some blood labs and it's like your vitamin D and your B12 are low, but you're not absorbing well, and you keep throwing supplements at it, might be hard to get enough of those into where they need to be in the cells when you've got issues going on in the gut. Another big role that your gut plays, so I'm going to give you two more. There's 100 we could go through, but I'm going to give you the top three. The other big thing that happens in your gut is it detoxifies and eliminates the things that you're exposed to in the environment and food and things you're drinking and medications. It processes supplements you're taking, all of the things. And if that process isn't happening well of detoxification and elimination, you're going to have junk, for lack of technical terms here, because let's make it simple. You're going to have junk floating around in your body that should have been eliminated, and that can cause systemic issues and decrease your cellular health and energy. You'll hear me talk a lot about cellular health and energy on the podcast because optimizing cellular health and energy is how we optimize fertility. Your egg cells are cells. Sperm cells are cells. So everything we're doing here is in the name of optimizing cellular health and energy. So if you've got toxic crap floating around in your system that should have been detoxified and eliminated, that's going to put a burden on your cellular health and energy. The other thing that ties back to the thyroid conversation that happens in the gut is that we convert our inactive thyroid hormone. If you're taking levothyroxine for a thyroid issue, or maybe you don't know you have slow thyroid function, that levothyroxine, or what the thyroid makes, is an inactive thyroid hormone. It has to be converted to an active thyroid hormone to control metabolic processes. And one of the metabolic processes that we're really concerned with here is having a healthy ovulation that's strong enough to get and stay pregnant. That happens in the liver and the gut. If you've got imbalances, slow function, anything going on in the liver and the gut, liver congestion, that's going to make it really hard for you to convert that inactive thyroid hormone into the active thyroid hormone you need so that you can get and stay pregnant. Okay, so those are three big things that happen in the gut and why we want to see a very clear picture of what's happening in the gut. So first thing for women, thyroid dysfunction, huge. Autoimmunity on the thyroid, huge. Gut issues for both women and men. And then another thing we take a deep look at is the micronutrient and mineral profile, as well as toxic exposure. So let me talk a little bit about what we tend to see there. We tend to see a whole lot of micronutrient deficiencies. And for whatever reason, I have a few theories, but they're not backed by data. They're backed up by, our clinical experience and what we see in practice. A lot of times the men we're working with have more micronutrient deficiencies than the women. Now, part of my theory is that the women come to us having paid a lot more attention to their fertility for a while, so they may be doing more things to optimize it, and the men end up having more issues than the women. And that's going to impact the couple's ability to get and stay pregnant. Even if you're listening and you're like, yeah, like I hear that, but I can get pregnant and I can't stay pregnant, so that must be my fault. That's not true. Sperm quality impacts everything up through problems within the pregnancy and with the baby. It's 50-50, okay? So we see micronutrient deficiencies in both partners. A lot of times it's more in the man. Why are micronutrient deficiencies important? Because if you are not getting adequate levels of the micronutrients you need, that is going to impact your cellular health and energy, which is going to impact your fertility, like we talked about a minute ago, right? So there's a lot of studies on what does vitamin B1 do and what does magnesium do and manganese and all of the different components of this and the amino acids. But you should know, short of talking about each of them individually, if you've got a deficiency in any of these critical micronutrients, and micronutrients are going to be nutrients like your B vitamin category, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, minerals like magnesium, potassium, manganese, boron, those are minerals. There's going to be amino acids in there. which you can find in a complete form. The best complete form would be in animal protein. And what I missed? Oh, antioxidants, which are beautiful fruits and vegetables in a variety of colors, are going to provide a lot of our antioxidants. Now, we see a lot of deficiencies here, and I'm going to tell you why. Everything's tied together, right? I talked about how the gut ties back to the thyroid. Let's talk about how the micronutrients tie back to the gut, and then the other component being the environmental aspect. So when we see a lot of micronutrient deficiencies, sometimes the diet needs some work, and whose diet doesn't need some work, right? It's near impossible to be perfect, and perfection isn't the goal, but a lot of people are really far from what looks like a good diet for fertility. And what looks like a good diet for fertility is very far off from what you probably think it is. That's another future episode. So keep tuning in and we'll talk about what is a good diet for fertility. But anyway, some people are really far off from that. Some people are eating really well. But if you have issues going on in your gut and you're having trouble absorbing the nutrients and minerals that you are eating or supplementing, you're going to have micronutrient deficiencies, which is a total bummer when you've been doing all of the things right. And you're like, cool, I still no, I already eat all of that. And it's like, okay, well, let's go back and work on the gut. The other piece of this that is really important is our soil is incredibly depleted. So eating the same amount of, let's use the example of some spinach or produce that your grandparents ate decades ago is not going to give you the same nutrient and mineral profile that it did back then because our soil is so depleted of minerals. So you have to eat, okay, let me say it this way. Even if you eat a perfect diet, it's going to be really, really, really hard to get everything you need from nutrition alone without supplementation, given the current state of commercial farming practices. It just is. Okay, so you could be eating really well, and it's very likely for most people, it's both. Most people, it's like, hey, you've got some issues going on in your gut. The vast majority of American adults have some level of gut symptoms on a regular basis, which is a very good clue that you've got imbalances in the gut that can impact your ability to absorb the food that you're eating, the supplements you're taking. And then we've got the food quality issue because of farming, right? So micronutrient deficiencies are huge. I'm going to give you one more component of this, and these are things we talk with our clients about as their labs come back in a lot of detail so we break down the component parts and tell them exactly what to do. One other piece of this is genetic. So if you've got any issues in the genetic chain or profile where you are methylating, you're turning your vitamins into something your body can use, it can be really hard to have adequate stores of primarily the B vitamins. So what we see a lot with our clients is a big micronutrient deficiency in a bunch of B vitamin categories. And then we will see something called homocysteine in the blood being elevated, which is telling us the body's having a hard time with the methylation process. Homocysteine is getting elevated. That is causing a whole lot of issues. And it's an easy, I won't say completely easy, it's a fairly easy fix. Nothing here is an easy fix where it's like, here, take your pill and you'll be on your way. But we're digging in and fixing root causes, which creates sustainable change that's going to last for years to come versus like, here's a treatment and let's see if we can force it and make it work. But we still don't know what's actually going on in the body. So I could go into some of the other categories that we see, but I don't want to drag on and on and on in one podcast here. So unexplained infertility, incredibly common. Know that if you're sitting in this boat where you're feeling totally hopeless or like, I don't want to do treatments, or maybe the treatments aren't working and you're like, this is making me feel insane and my bank account is really dwindling and is this ever going to work? Taking a beat and figuring out what's actually going on in your body and fixing it, and then deciding, do I want to go back to treatments? Usually I will look at clients after we've gotten through this process and say, why do you need to go that route? Some people have frozen embryos or reasons they want to go back to that route, and that's fine. But for most people, when we figure out what's actually going on in their bodies, it's like, why do you need to go back to treatments? Go try naturally. You've just corrected the reason for the infertility in the first place. So some of those common things we see with women especially, slow thyroid function and autoimmunity with the thyroid gland, huge. Both genders, we see gut issues that can make it really hard for them to absorb the nutrients and minerals they're eating and to detoxify and eliminate the things they're eating. Micronutrient deficiencies are also huge in both women and men. And one other category before I wrap up that I can't forget is toxic exposure. This is a thing we test for on one of the labs that we run to see what kind of toxic exposure and colonization, if you will, is happening in the body. There are so many toxins that we're exposed to. And again, all of our genetics and lifestyle lead us to a different place and ability to deal with it. Now, can you live a tox-free lifestyle? No, please stop trying to do that and making yourself miserable about every single thing you come into contact with. But you need to educate yourself about the things that you're putting on and in your body and breathing, and better choices where possible. Do not go into your makeup bag and throw everything away in one day and all of your cleaning products and break the bank on it. But we work with clients to peel away at those toxic exposures, and we can see it on this lab that we run. Because if you've got toxic exposure in the body at a level that is above what the body's toxic burden can handle, I like to think of it like a rain barrel. Everybody's got this rain barrel where we can handle, our bodies can process some toxins, right? We have a detox system in the body, but that detox system gets slow. We're exposed to too many toxins. We're not eating organic. We've got bad air quality. We're drinking tap water. We're using all of the chemical makeup products, cleaning products, like down the list of all of those things. And eventually that rain barrel of available toxic exposure that our body can process through is overflowing. And it comes out in symptoms like an inability to get and stay pregnant, like gut issues, like acne, like headaches, like fatigue, like depression, anxiety. All of that can be from toxic exposure. So that's another big area where we want to see what's actually going on in the body and then work with you to reduce that toxic burden. One thing I want to say about all of this is perfection, again, is never the goal. If you've been trying to do everything right and you're like, it's still not working, and oh my gosh, I can't be exposed to that, I can't have that, and I can't have that, you're actually creating excess cortisol in the body, which is also toxic. So I tell clients, like, educate yourself, make changes where you can, and don't panic and freak out about this because that's actually going to make things worse. Perfection is not ever the goal here. This is incredibly hard to do on your own, by the way. We have clients who are so smart and are doing so many things right, but when they come to work with us and see what's actually going on in their bodies, they have to do less, because it's like, you don't have to focus on doing all of the things perfectly. We'll tell you exactly what is going on in your body and what your body needs. And then it takes a huge burden off on time, on money, on trying different things, on driving yourself literally insane, trying to figure out what's going to be that magic bullet that your body needs without knowing what's actually happening in your body, and working with an expert team like ours to be told what to do about it. Like, these tests are so interesting, but if you're running them with a team who doesn't have the expertise in how they impact fertility and what to do about it, the information is interesting, but not actionable. So if you're interested in chatting with us more about what this looks like, if you're struggling with infertility, you can shoot me a message on Instagram and introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about your fertility journey. I will share more about what our programs look like and how we can support you in that. If you're interested in just getting the lab data, we also have a new offer where you can run that full panel of functional labs, and we'll tell you what we're seeing on those labs and how it correlates back to what you've got going on in your body and your fertility challenges. So tune in next week. We're going to do I think we're going to dig in on the gut next week. So tune in for that. It's super interesting. The GI map gives us so much good information. So I'm going to, walk through what that looks like and what we found and how we've taken what we found on that test with a ton of clients and gotten them to successful pregnancies. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all soon.